Hey everyone, you are on the 14th Step, a podcast about addiction and recovery. My name's Mark. I'm a professional counselor and a professional addict.
My name is Skip. I'm a recovery coach and a recovering non-professional addict.
You sure about that?
No, I'm a Hall of Fame professional. Okay, I looked up some questions. This is from a recovery panel, and I'm not even sure.
Did you sit on this panel?
I did not sit on this panel, but there's some great questions on here. And I wanted to get your the first thing that pops into your mind about some of these, and we can talk about them, okay?
Let's do it.
The first question is a very interesting question. What do you typically say to people that are in recovery and then they relapse?
Well, I don't react. I don't shame them. I don't say that they failed. I tell them, if you're in recovery and you want to use, that's natural. If you are in recovery and you just never ever think about it again and it's never anything, I would say to them, that would be weird. So I try to normalize it a little bit.
Gotcha.
And then I say, but the important thing is that you're talking to me right now. That's what's important.
That's huge, that they admitted it, right?
That they had the courage to say something, that they're still alive, that they're still functioning. They can learn from it. So I know that when I'm talking to a guy and they've relapsed, I already assume that they've had a lot of fallout already from family, from legal, whatever. So I'm not going to add to that fallout by trying to shame that person over it.
What in meetings and different people that I've come across, every once in a while you have somebody that'll come in and you can tell by the way they're carrying themselves, or whatever. And then when they do talk and they talk about having a relapse and start crying and all this, to me, it's one of the most brave things I've seen somebody do is after a relapse, show up at a meeting and admit it and try to carry on from there.
The times that I've been the most inspired in meetings have been when people come and say, I used, and they pick up like a desire chip or a tag or whatever. And I've been in meetings where there've been guys who have been sober 8 years, 9 years, who are pillars of the recovery community. They sponsor guys, and then they show up one day and they're like, I relapsed and I'm going to trade my chip in for a 24-hour chip or whatever.
Wow.
And I pray that I would have the courage to do that, because I think what keeps people out there using is that they feel too embarrassed to go and do what a person like that does.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do it, if you do relapse and you build up that courage to go and talk about it, it's really the opposite of what you fear, because people are inspired by it.
They are.
They're just happy that you're there.
Exactly. Because it's easy to forget maybe you had some sort of positive influence on other people, and then when you don't show up, it's almost like you just threw all that out the window.
Recovery is not a competition.
That's good.
To see how much time you can, it's not a comparison. It's not a competition between people to see who's the most sober.
Right.
And if you make it that way, then that's just your ego talking.
Yep. Okay, here's another one. You ready? What are some of the things that you would typically say to a newcomer to give them hope? And this is a kind of a trick question, I guess.
I have had guys come who are white-knuckling it, and they're going home to an environment where there's drugs, and they don't know what they're going to do, and they're struggling just with that craving part of it. If they're in that place, I always tell people, man, just put it off till tomorrow. Just don't use today. Tell yourself, I'll use tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just put it off for one day, and I'll break it down by the hour. If it's 3 p.m, I'm like, you can stay sober for this hour that we're talking. Can you stay sober till 5?
Yeah, can you go to another meeting?
Yeah, can you stay sober till 6 p.m.? I try to break it down like a little bit at a time.
That's good. Watch the 14-Step podcast.
Watch us.
Binge watch.
Do anything.
Anything.
And just realize that tomorrow is a new day. don't give up before the miracle happens. Because I truly believe that there is a miracle in recovery that will happen if we give it enough time. But we get frustrated, we cave into the craving. Just don't give up.
My answer to this that I said was a trick question is if they're at a and this maybe applies to a brand new person that's never ever been to a meeting, they're at their first meeting. My first thought is, wow, somebody needs to say something profound, so they do whatever. But here's where the faith and the experience, you know what? They're going to hear exactly what they need to hear.
Yeah.
Without me even know, and I don't have a clue what that is that they need to hear. But if they're at that meeting, something someone says is going to resonate with them usually, and that's they're going to hear what they needed to hear at that moment without me having any input in that decision whatsoever. And that's freeing for me, because then it frees me up to just talk about my own experience.
The most profound things that I hear at meetings are when people say, God, I just really want to use today, or I'm scared of relapsing today, because that is a reality of what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so guilty of trying to say profound things too. Or sitting in a meeting thinking about what I'm going to say.
Instead of just
listening.
Taking in the moment.
Right.
That's the ego, man. That's
It
absolutely.
is.
Okay, here's another one. And this one's hard. This one's tough. What are some misconceptions or unhelpful or misleading advice that you've heard that come from either treatment centers, counselors, coaches, the recovering community as a whole?
Okay.
And maybe doesn't reconcile with your own experiences? Man, that's a compound question.
Okay. I can think of this.
Okay.
Within recovery circles, there's this hard line. It doesn't matter why you're an addict, you're just an addict. And if you think it matters why you're an addict, then you're just in denial. Or you're so self-centered that everything's your fault. You know, there can be a real hard line that people take against people who are working steps. Old timers can get this way, or not even just old timers, but counselors who are really into 12-step recovery.
Right.
I think that it is a misconception that we can't ever figure out what addiction is or how people become an addict or what those things are that happen to people. I think that really matters. And I think for a long time in the recovery community, there's been not any focus on, well, what happened to you that you got this way? A lot of guys in recovery are like, well, that doesn't matter, just work the steps. You're self-centered, you're selfish if you think that way, just work the steps.
Wow.
And that's good advice, work the steps.
It is.
But it's also, well, you're just self-centered and everything's your fault, and you just need to see how you screwed up and move on with it. And that's not how all people are, but I have heard that line of thinking before.
Can I run a parallel into the medical community or the dental community where that same thing happens? We are very good at treating the problem and the symptom in this country medically, right? If you have appendicitis or you have a bad heart, they fix your heart.
Mm-hmm.
They don't that much go into what made you have the bad heart to begin with.
Right.
They fix the symptom. They don't go back and say, you should have lost 50 pounds 10 years ago and worked out and ate better. I'm getting into some weeds here, but
no,
dentists really do
right.
this. They will fix that cavity, but they will not. I've had one fix a filling and not tell me about the 3 other ones that are beside it. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think they're so busy, everybody's so overwhelmed that it's the tyranny of the urgent, and that's what gets attention.
Medical professionals get weird when it comes to addiction. And I have heard many doctors lecture on addiction, and some of what I hear are doctors saying, well, addiction is a brain disease and people who are in addiction have no choice. It hijacks their ability to reason, it hijacks their choice completely, and they have no choice but to continue with the addiction. And I always challenge that, because if addicts truly had no choice, there would be no one that recovered.
Exactly.
I mean, if that were the case...
Be a bunch of dang zombies.
Yeah, and it would just be a death sentence.
Right.
And so I get pretty iffy again, and might come from treatment centers that say that addiction is purely a chemical brain disease, because I don't believe it is.
Right.
I think it's much more complicated than that.
Yep.
Obviously, there's a component of that,
Yep.
but everyone who is an addict has a choice. It's just that the choice to recover at that moment might seem more scary than the choice to keep using.
And in treatment centers and things like that, where there's more dual diagnosis and more of a well-rounded treatment is a big deal, isn't it?
It is.
So where it's just not a detox place and then you leave.
And people who try to go to detox and they're in a detox for 5 or 6 days and they feel better and then they leave, I have literally never talked to a person that has been successful doing that. Where they go and that's all they're going to do.
They dry up.
Didn't
they call it back in the old days a spa, right? They went to the spa.
Well, I mean, maybe they just laid around and they got some sedatives for a few days and they come out feeling better, because detox is very good at patching someone up. But if that's all they do, nothing's changing.
Right. Yeah, they're not addressing the problem.
Right.
So anyway, interesting questions. Very interesting. Everybody's got some good opinions. We'd love to hear yours. Please comment below and let us know if we can discuss them on the 14th step.
Leave in the comments below what you think addiction is, because that's a whole thing.
It is. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.